"Why won't you talk to me?" I asked. "I've decided not to talk to people I don't know," was his blunt reply. "I get it. I'll leave." Living with my husband's parents was already tough. They ignored me completely. I expected some coldness from my mother-in-law, but never thought my father-in-law would act the same. It all changed when my sister-in-law, who wasn't fond of me, moved back. Suddenly, our peaceful life was flipped upside down. "Don't regret it, okay?" I remember thinking defiantly. "You think I'll regret leaving? Think again, meanie." With that, I packed my bags and left my in-laws' house. Just 3 days after I moved out, chaos erupted there. I met my husband at work. He was in sales and frequently visited my office since I was his main contact. The more meetings we had, the more I grew to like him. He wasn't just kind and caring, he was also tall, not the typical handsome, but definitely charming. He was popular, but for some reason, he took a special interest in me and we started dating. During our conversations, he shared that he had a normal upbringing with parents and a sister. In contrast, I lost my parents young and grew up in an orphanage. It was tough, but I opened up to him about it. "That sounds tough, but don't worry, I'm always here for you," he assured me. It wasn't long before he proposed. He was eager for our relationship to lead to marriage and quickly introduced me to his family. I was nervous about telling his parents about my upbringing, but they listened attentively and reassured me that it wouldn't impact our marriage. It was comforting when they said my background didn't matter and welcomed me as their daughter-in-law. However, my sister-in-law was shocked. "You grew up in an orphanage?" she blurted out, which made my husband scold her. Looking back, she probably disliked me from the start. Before we got married, my husband and I discussed living with his parents. We considered it seriously, but I decided to keep my job. My career was progressing well, and I had just taken on more responsibilities at work. We discussed it and agreed that he would move alone after our wedding. I wanted to enjoy being newlyweds for a while, and even considered visiting him on long weekends for a mini vacation together. Moving in with my in-laws right after getting married felt overwhelming, but for my husband, it probably made him feel more at ease, possibly easing his mom's worries too. Since I had lost my parents when I was young, I had always yearned for a family, so the idea of living with his parents wasn't completely undesirable. Besides, they had always been kind to me, and over time I grew to like them. Balancing work and my role as a daughter-in-law was tough, but having a family made me feel happy and complete. Then, one day, my father-in-law approached me with a request that hinted at trouble brewing in our seemingly happy household. It happened while my usually anxious mother-in-law, who often bossed my father-in-law around, was out shopping. I was planning to clean on my day off when he asked to speak with me privately. "What's up?" I asked, curious. "Well, I don't want my wife to find out, but I need to take some time off work," he confessed, looking distressed. I was surprised. He explained that he had been struggling at work and his health was suffering. He didn't want to upset my mother-in-law, who, despite her good intentions, often became overly anxious and critical. She had noticed his recent weight loss, but instead of showing concern, she criticized him for taking sick days, accusing him of hindering his career progression. Seeing his condition worsen, he had secretly started taking time off to visit the hospital. He feared that if he suggested a break openly, it would anger my mother-in-law, especially since they depended on the extra income from his overtime. If he told my husband, it might inadvertently reach her ears. So, he turned to me, asking if I could help with the bills during his time off. Hearing that hurt. I wanted to support him, given how warmly they had accepted me despite my background, I thought to myself. So, I agreed. Okay, I'll send you money every month. Use it for whatever you need. I'm really sorry you're going through this, but try to get better soon. After that, my father-in-law pretended to go to work while I secretly transferred money to his account for his expenses. My mother-in-law rarely checked the bank statements, so she didn't notice. He used this time to visit a mental health clinic and take walks in the mountains, which seemed to help him recover. He was getting better, and I thought he might return to work soon. But then, unexpectedly, after a fight with her husband, my sister-in-law moved back in with us. "There's nothing like being back home," she exclaimed, visibly stressed from her marital issues. "I thought I'd lose my mind if I stayed with that stupid husband of mine. I'll be here for a while. Can you make meals for me too?" From the start, I knew my sister-in-law didn't like me. During our first family gathering, my husband had to step in when she made snide remarks. Now, with her back, I sensed more challenges ahead, but I was determined to maintain peace in the family. We talked it over and decided that he would move in alone after our wedding. I wanted to savor our early days as newlyweds, and I even planned to visit him on long weekends for little getaways. The thought of moving in with my in-laws right after marrying felt overwhelming, though my husband seemed more at ease with the idea. He probably hoped it would alleviate his mom's concerns. Since I lost my parents young, I've always longed for a sense of family. Living with my in-laws wasn't entirely unwelcome. They had been kind, and I had grown fond of them. Balancing work and my duties as a daughter-in-law was challenging, but having a family made me feel fulfilled and content. However, an unexpected request from my father-in-law soon signaled trouble in our harmonious household. It was on a day my usually tense and commanding mother-in-law was out shopping. I was gearing up for some cleaning when my father-in-law pulled me aside for a chat. "I need to take some time off work," he whispered, hoping to keep it from my mother-in-law. He shared how workplace stress and deteriorating health were forcing his hand. Observing their dynamics, I saw how my mother-in-law's anxieties led her to frequently lash out, and my father-in-law, growing increasingly frail, tiptoed around her to keep the peace. Previously, when he'd taken a sick day, she'd scolded him, concerned more with appearances and promotions than his well-being. Despite his struggles, he pressed on, secretly taking time off for medical visits. He feared my mother-in-law's reaction to a formal break from work and the financial implications of losing overtime pay. Reluctantly, he turned to me, not wanting to risk involving my husband, who might inadvertently tell my mother-in-law. Moved by his plight and grateful for the acceptance his family had shown me, I agreed to support him. "I'll help with the bills," I assured him. Gratefully, he thanked me, and we devised a plan for me to discreetly send money to cover his expenses while he sought treatment. This arrangement continued with my father-in-law feigning his routine work days while actually attending therapy and finding solace in nature walks. Over time, his health improved visibly. Just when I thought things might return to normal, a new upheaval came. After a spat, my sister-in-law stormed back to her parents' home, declaring a temporary stay and demanding I cater to her as well. At our first family meeting, my husband was upset because his sister clearly showed her disapproval during the wedding. She had a sour look the entire time, and even told me straight out, "My brother looks great, but he could have married someone prettier." She openly judged me for being raised in an institution, saying it was embarrassing that I didn't have parents at the wedding. However, she got married before us and had already moved out, so I thought I wouldn't have to deal with her much. That's why I thought it would be okay to live with them. If she had still been living at home, I wouldn't have even considered moving in, knowing how she would treat me every day. I thought her stay was just temporary because of her marriage problems and expected her to leave in a few days. Even though she was stern with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law had never been harsh towards me. Even if my sister-in-law made mean comments, I believed my mother-in-law would defend me. But I was wrong. One day when I came back from work, my mother-in-law's behavior seemed strange. "Is something bothering you?" I asked. She seemed distant, not talking to me like usual. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "Did you know you've been talking about me behind my back?" "What? I've never said anything bad about you. You've always been kind to me, and I'm really thankful. Why would I say bad things about you?" But she just said, "You've been acting like the perfect daughter-in-law, but you've been talking behind my back," and left the room. In the hallway, my sister-in-law was smirking. "Looks like you're not in her good books anymore. Did your true colors come out? Being from an orphanage, your background really does matter, huh? It's best not to gossip about people." "I haven't said anything bad about her," I replied. "Oh, the neighbors seem to have heard everything. When I came back home after so long, they told me you've been talking badly about her all the time." "What? Who are these neighbors?" I demanded. "Well, it's been a while since I got married and moved out, so I kind of forgot their names. I never said any of that. Stop making things up." "Oh, how disrespectful, Mom. She's calling me a liar and being mean to me," my sister-in-law said as she walked into my mother-in-law's room. After that, my sister-in-law's behavior got worse. She claimed I told her to sleep in the hallway and take the last turn for a bath because she's just a guest. She complained to my mother-in-law about every little thing. Every time, I had to explain I hadn't said or done any of it. But my mother-in-law seemed to believe my sister-in-law and be influenced by her. My sister-in-law stayed longer, making me wonder if she planned to stay forever. With all these worries, I went home feeling sad. "I'm back," I said, but before, my mother-in-law would warmly say, "Welcome back," but now it was quiet. "I'll start making dinner," I said, stepping into the living room. I was surprised. Usually my sister-in-law would rush me to make dinner, but now my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law were eating sushi together. "Surprise," my sister-in-law said. "Oh, looks like someone who isn't really family is here. You were planning on having sushi, were you?" My mother-in-law kept eating without looking at me, watching TV. "If you wanted sushi, you should have told me. I came home right after shopping," I said. "Ha, no one said they wanted that," my sister-in-law replied, not even looking at me. "Hey, Mom, Dad, I went out with my friends during the day and got some delicious pudding." "Let's eat together," my sister-in-law said, ignoring me. They all started eating the pudding. I was tired from work and didn't have the energy to argue, so I went to my room without eating. The next day, my sister-in-law said she was going out with friends and asked me to drive her to the station. I said no because it was a weekday and I had work. Even if we were going in the same direction, it was a different route, and she wanted to leave around noon. "Just take the day off, it's fine. Your cute little sis-in-law just wants a ride. She hasn't had a chance to relax since she got married, right? Can't you be a bit nicer to her now?" she said. "With all due respect, didn't you go out with friends last night after getting a late call? It seems like you've been going out almost every day since you came home. I have work. Please take the bus or train." My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were talking quietly, but I was done and left for work. However, that night, the event that made me decide to leave this house happened. I got delayed at work, and came home after buying groceries, expecting to face some criticism. It was raining heavily when I left the office, and I got soaked just getting in and out of the car. I wondered what nasty surprise was waiting for me tonight. But when I got home, they were all eating takeout again, just like the day before. No hello, acting like they didn't see me, but I was used to it. I looked out into the courtyard from the hallway and saw something in the middle of the garden. Looking closer, I saw it was my stuff, my designer bag that I bought with my first paycheck, shoes that were a birthday gift from my husband, and even my work computer all wet. I was shocked, and my sister-in-law said with a smirk, "Having the strangers' things in the house grosses me out, so I threw them out. Flaunting a designer bag like that, how arrogant of you." Neither of my in-laws said anything about her terrible behavior. Why didn't you stop her? Have I done something to you? Do you really believe her lies about me bad-mouthing you and bullying her? Aren't you upset with her for what she did? I asked. My mother-in-law avoided my eyes and stayed silent. Why won't you say anything? I asked again. I can't talk to strangers. I can't be friendly with someone who's not family, my mother-in-law replied, not even looking at me. My sister-in-law grinned, waiting for me to respond. Wait, where's my father-in-law? I've been the one supporting him during his time off. I've been the one handling finances in this house. I did it out of gratitude. But shouldn't he stand up for me now? Surely he'd be on my side. Hoping for his support, I looked at him, but he walked past me without a word and went into his room. That was it for me. I see I've had enough. Oh, are you upset? I'm sorry. Honestly, I never liked you from the start. You know, being from an institution and all. Just don't regret leaving, my sister-in-law said, as if I would. Good riddance, I replied. I packed my things and got ready to leave right away. Only my father-in-law seemed worried because he relied on me financially, but even he didn't try to stop me or speak up for me. I was done with his indifference. Although my husband's work assignment was far away, I just wanted to get out of that house as soon as possible. I quickly got into my car and drove to him. I never talked to my husband about any of this. I doubt my mother-in-law told him about my sister-in-law coming back home. If he knew, he would have reached out to me because he knows I don't get along with her. But my husband never mentioned anything about my sister-in-law in his calls or messages. I never doubted my husband's behavior before, but maybe she's manipulating him, feeding him lies about things. Even now, as I go to him, he might treat me the same way they did. My heart was heavy, feeling suspicious even toward my husband, whom I trust the most. If he's siding with them, maybe divorce is the only option. That's how distressed I felt. When I arrived at his out-of-state apartment, he hadn't returned yet, probably busy since it was the end of the month. As I waited, my husband came in energetically, maybe noticing the lights. What, you're here? You should have told me you were coming. I would have come back sooner. What a pleasant surprise. No, just seeing your face, he said with a big smile. Seeing him happy to see me after all that happened at my in-laws' house mixed with relief and humiliation, and I could have pulled back my tears. What's wrong? Did I do something? Seriously, what's going on? He asked, concerned. It seemed my husband had no clue about the treatment I endured at his parents' house. I gathered myself, knowing I needed to explain everything clearly to him. I started recounting everything, how I've been financially helping his father, who took medical leave without telling his wife, how his sister returned and was now staying at their parents' house, how she lied about me to his mother, turning her against me, how they treated me like an outsider, ignored me, and even ruined my belongings by leaving them out in the rain. Through tears and pauses, I poured out everything to him. Finally, I made it clear that I couldn't go back to that house ever again, and if he couldn't support me on this, I would want to divorce. My husband apologized for being too focused on work and not checking in on me more often. He regretted his family's behavior towards me. He assured me I didn't have to go back there or even talk to them again, even if I forgave them someday. He was firm about cutting ties with his parents and sister. He also promised not to provide any more financial aid to his father. That night, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. The tension I'd been carrying melted away, and I slept peacefully by his side. After leaving my in-laws' house, I never went back. Commuting for my husband's out-of-state place wasn't practical, but I had already talked to my company about working remotely. My job didn't require me to be in the office all the time, and many of my colleagues worked from home too. Although I still had to visit the office a few times a month, some colleagues lived even farther away, so working remotely wasn't a problem. Living with my in-laws and dealing with my sister-in-law's bullying, I hadn't truly experienced married life, but now we could finally live like newlyweds. As I set up my remote workstation as expected, my sister-in-law contacted me. It turned out that the day after I left their house was my father-in-law's payday. My mother-in-law usually takes out a certain amount and transfers it to their household account, but this time she couldn't. It was only then that she realized I had been helping them financially during my father-in-law's time off. "Hey, why didn't you tell me you were covering the living expenses?" he asked me. He asked me not to, saying he didn't want you to know, so I kept it to myself. Anyway, we're running out of money for living expenses, and there's no one to cook or do laundry. The place is a mess. As his wife, you need to come back and take care of these things and send money quickly. How heartless. I already told you, didn't I? I have no intention of going back to that house or being treated like your maid. Why should I help people who hate me, ruin my things, and treat me like this? Aren't you his wife? Without your help, we can't pay the bills or even shop. That's exactly why I'm saying it. I'm an outsider, so it's none of my business. I hung up, ignoring my sister-in-law's complaints. She and my mother-in-law kept bothering me with calls and messages, but I ignored all of them. Even after my husband returned from work, they kept calling persistently. When my husband finally answered, he told them firmly, "I will forgive you for how you treated her, and I'm not sending her back to you. I'm not coming back either. I don't see you as my family anymore. Leave my wife alone or you'll regret it." Considering my sister-in-law adored her brother and my mother-in-law heavily relied on him, they were probably shocked. A few days later, I got a call from my father-in-law. He said living with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was getting too hard, and he begged me to continue the financial help. I'm grateful they accepted me when I married, despite growing up in an orphanage, but they didn't support me when I needed it. Despite all the financial help I provided, I don't owe them anything. Why should I help those who join others in ignoring me? I'll never assist you again. And with that, I ended the call. Later on, my persistent mother-in-law and sister-in-law shamelessly showed up at my workplace. Since I was already working remotely and had a bad feeling about them, I had informed my company about the situation. Security was alerted right away. They caused a scene, demanding that the company make me send money back home. When my husband heard about it, he said, "Report them to the police." My colleagues were supportive, saying, "I can't believe you had to live with those people." Focus on your remote work with your husband. As for my in-laws, my father-in-law's health declined under the pressure from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and he eventually quit his job. My sister-in-law tried to return to her husband's family, but he refused to take her back. The town quickly learned about her drama at my workplace, causing an uproar at her in-laws' place. The real reason for their fight was her affair, and this incident added to their problems, leading to an immediate decision to divorce. Left without a home, my in-laws and sister-in-law moved to a cheap apartment, managing with part-time jobs. As for my husband and me, we were finally enjoying peaceful days, feeling mentally and physically fulfilled. Recently, we found out we're expecting a child, and we couldn't be happier. We're eagerly awaiting the day we meet our baby, cherishing our time together.